This case is closing and collapsing in real time, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Cohen's bombshell testimony kind of doing him in, because you know what? You can't rely on somebody who's already perjured himself over and over and over again. That's what we're learning. This whole thing is just falling apart. Alvin Bragg, what were you thinking? It was all political, so political that even the likes of MSNBC and CNN are calling it out. Welcome to the program, everyone. I am Trish Regan. As we speak, we've got Michael Cohen, the former attorney for Donald Trump, testifying in court. Alvin Bragg bringing this case forward, even though they really haven't been able to prove in any way, shape, or form what they're alleging Donald Trump did. I mean, Michael Cohen's supposed to do the deed, so to speak, today, but this is not the guy you want to be relying on. We're going to talk all about it. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you like. Make sure that you share. Make sure you hit the bell so you know when I'm here. This is collapsing in real time. Michael Cohen's bombshell testimony going on as we speak. And you know what? It's bad. It's so bad that even the mainstream media, even the lefty media like MSNBC, is actually having to call it what it is. I mean, when you're relying on a guy that's already perjured himself, when you're relying on a guy that Judge Merchan, and we know where he stands, had to come out and warn on Friday, hey, buddy, knock it off. Stop talking about the case online. You got yourself a good old-fashioned problem. This is going nowhere. You know what? He gets the nickname Teflon Trump for a reason. Here he was, just outside the courthouse moments ago this morning as this first came about in the morning. I mean, it's incredible. Like, they're giving him a national platform, by the way, every single time he goes out there. And then America goes, wow, yeah, he's back in court again. For what? For why? Here we are.
So thank you very much. On Saturday, we have a tremendous rally, and I hope you're all going to be there. It's in Wildwood, New Jersey, where there's going to be a big crowd, and we're going to be saying a lot. We'll be able to campaign on Saturday. And nevertheless, we have a horrible gag order that shouldn't be allowed. It has never been on. Nothing like this has ever happened. What you're witnessing is a first. I have some articles that came out this morning. Jonathan Turley, the predominant question in the Manhattan hush money trial of former President Donald Trump is not one of guilt, but something far more basic. Is the district attorney Alvin Bragg's case a joke? Is it a prank? Is it a farce? On Thursday, the answers became clear. It's all of the above, but it's also an abominable abuse of our justice system and a wretched assault on the rule of law. It's Jonathan Turley, and it just goes on and finishes, although it's a long story that's brutal about this case. This case is...
You know what? He's been going out every single day. Every single morning, and he's saying sort of the same thing over and over again, which is that this is election interference. And America agrees with him. It is election interference because you're preventing him from actually going out and campaigning in those key swing states that do matter right now, ladies and gentlemen. They matter. And so every single legal analyst keeps coming back with the same information. That, you know what, this is not
but
fair.
The big thing today...
I want to show you another clip. Donald Trump out there again this morning saying, you know what, this is not fair. Everybody agrees with this, by the way. And it's not even like they're all on Fox, okay? Or they're all streaming or whatever. This is like across the board stuff, and I'm going to show you this. Because it's pretty amazing when you actually have former federal prosecutors on the likes of MSNBC, on the likes of CNN, and on the likes of Fox, all saying the same thing, okay? Here is Donald Trump this morning, just hours ago, quoting some of these commentators saying this whole thing is nothing but a whole bunch of rubbish.
But the big thing today seems to be the Times. I'm sure the Times is thrilled, but I respect them for at least letting it come out. And there it is. It's Trump leading by a lot in every state. Every swing state leading by a lot. This trial is rigged. It's dishonest. It's a disgrace to New York. It's a disgrace to the country. I should be out campaigning now instead of sitting in a very cold courthouse all day long. This is a Biden prosecution. It's election interference at a level that nobody in this country has ever seen before. This is for third world countries, not for the USA. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he's spot on with that. It really does feel third world-esque. And this is coming from someone who's done a lot of reporting in the third world, specifically in Latin America. And I'll tell you, that's exactly what it feels like right now. This should not be happening, ladies and gentlemen, but we've deteriorated to a point where everything totally, it has become political. And this is what's crazy. The media, the mainstream media, is even being forced at this moment in time to call it all out for what it is. Because you get a guy who's perjured himself over and over and over again on the stand testifying against Trump. I mean, I'm sorry, but when Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen are your key witnesses, that tells me, Alvin, buddy, you don't have much of a case here. And I'm not even a lawyer. You know, I'm an economics person. We can talk markets. We can talk interest rates. I'm not a lawyer. But this is so freaking obvious to anyone. You can see this a mile away. And yet we had to come to this. They're embarrassing themselves in real time. Ladies and gentlemen, they're embarrassing themselves. And so is this MSNBC anchor who had to get called out by his own guest saying, you know, what you just said doesn't really make sense. And here is why. Watch it on the likes of MSNBC. Here we go.
His surreptitious audio recordings. And can I offer a couple thoughts on the opening?
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Cohen keeps saying that he lied on Donald Trump's behalf. That is only true with respect to his lies to Congress.
Right.
He lied to the Justice Department. He lied to the IRS. He lied to banks. None of that was for Trump. All of it was for him. And after the court decision you read, which was indeed favorable to Michael Cohen, a couple of months later, a federal judge concluded that he had perjured himself. So the whole story of Michael Cohen's credibility in history is more complicated than I think people even have the ability to process.
Wait, so then given what you just said, how worried, if you were on the prosecution's team tonight, right now, how worried would you be about Cohen's testimony tomorrow or this coming week?
I wouldn't be so much worried about tomorrow, or because the first day or two, presumably the prosecution will be putting him on and they will likely have had a sort of plan worked out. It's the cross that's going to be the problem. And I don't know, anyone who's seen Michael Cohen on television, I mean, this is not a man who's terribly composed or, I don't know, as cognitively fluent as he would like to believe he is. I don't know. I don't have a nicer way to say it. Anyway, he could easily be taken apart during a cross-examination. And if he blows up, right, and starts railing against whoever and just going off the cuff, because he's going to be up there for hours, potentially days on cross. Like, is he going to be able to hold it together? I don't know. He doesn't seem to me to have a lot of self-control. And most of the key witnesses in the case have already dumped all over him before this.
I was going to ask about his being prolific, you know, the memoir, the podcast, everything.
All terrible ideas for a witness.
Ooh. Okay. So there's a former federal prosecutor saying, you know, I wouldn't put all your eggs in this basket. Because even if he can get through today, what happens in the cross-examination? What happens as this moves forward? Already, everybody's trashed him. I mean, Hope Hicks the other day, the former assistant, then turned sort of main person for Donald Trump at the White House. Hope Hicks came out and said, like, this guy was no good. She never knew him to ever look out for anybody but himself. And so this is already in the jury's mind, right? They've already been sort of effectively colored with an impression of who Michael Cohen is. And he was willing to lie before to help dig himself out of a ditch. Who says he's not lying now? By the way, has anybody proved that it wasn't him, entirely him, that made the deal all on his own with David Pecker from the National Enquirer? I mean, they've yet to even prove a crime. Anyway, keep in mind who we're dealing with. Michael Cohen, who will say anything to anyone and has been spouting his mouth off nonstop all over the television airwaves while Donald Trump gets the gag order. Remember this? Here we go.
You can't imagine the things that he's going to do, how far he's going to press the line. If you think Vladimir Putin, Russia entering Ukraine is, you know, for a land grab, well, what do you think Donald is going to do if he becomes a dictator? Mexico, Canada, whatever our bordering countries are. So, Ali, when you said that you're running to Canada, you know, half my family lives in Toronto. I can only tell you, we can't go to Canada because eventually Canada will become annexed to America. And I know people say, stop it, Michael. It's all hyperbole. No, it's not.
He won't be a dictator on day two. He will be a king. He will make himself into the Fuhrer, and he will make everybody raise their hand and salute him, you know, Heil Hitler, because that's what he is. That's what he's going to shut down this station. He wants to jail your president's CEO. He wants to execute Joint Chief of Staff Mark Milley. He wants to, execute Mike Pence. I mean, he's got a hit list of people. He wants to throw everyone into Gitmo. I mean, it's hard to imagine that we're even having this conversation.
Okay, so this is why you can't rely on Michael Cohen as a reliable witness. And you have to think of the vendetta, if you would, that he has against Donald Trump. And the reality that he wouldn't even be able to be out there saying these things. He'd actually already be locked up, right? Remember, they went after him first, but then he turned, and now all of a sudden he's saying all this stuff. I think his credibility is very, very much under fire. And I think this kind of lack of ethics is eventually going to be the thing that backfires spectacularly against Alvin Bragg. This is what's going to bring the prosecution down. The fact that they've relied entirely on this guy, as well as Stormy Daniels, as their key witnesses, for goodness sakes. And by the way, what did Stormy add? Thank you very much. Other than she had a vendetta against Donald Trump, that she owed him a ton of money and that she couldn't stand his guts, right? That's all she added to the equation. She didn't help prove whether or not there were any financial crimes, of which they're alleging there were 34 of them. This has gotten so crazy that even on CNN, they're starting to say, whoa, wait a second. I mean, this is probably, so you get MSNBC with the former federal prosecutor saying, hey, you guys don't have the best witness here. And everybody over at CNN is starting to echo this as well. They're putting on guests, for example, like JD Vance, who's probably going to be top of the ticket. I know we're debating this and we're all talking about it. And, it could be the governor of Nevada. We'll see. Anyway, JD Vance, who's certainly in the running, he's a potential VP candidate for Donald Trump. He was on the airwaves on CNN pointing out exactly what we already, he's trying to school the anchor there on what's really going down in real time. Take a look.
I don't think he should be treated differently at all, Dana, but I certainly think he is being treated differently. The only thing that Alvin Bragg, the New York prosecutors team, thinks Donald Trump did wrong is that he ran for president in 2024 and he looks to be on the cusp of victory. That is the only thing that this is ultimately about. If you look at the underlying argument of the case, they can't even identify what it is that Donald Trump did. They said he committed a paperwork violation in the service of a crime, but they won't even specify the crime that he allegedly committed. And I think that when you look at all of these attacks on Donald Trump, you have to be honest with yourself and say, this is not about law and this is not about justice. This is about the fact that President Joe Biden has a failed record as commander-in-chief and leader of this country, and the Democrats can't talk about that. So what they're doing is putting these trials out there and saying, focus on this, not on the fact that the world is on fire and the fact that you have gotten poorer under the presidency of Joe Biden.
Yeah. Wow, right? I mean, if they can't even come up with the crime, if they can't even articulate it, and now they're relying on Michael Cohen to tell them something when he's lied every which way to Sunday, what do they have? Other than just a bunch of people that are filled with sour grapes that are angry because Donald Trump dared to run again. Remember, he shouldn't have, right? He was supposed to be excommunicado. There was no way, no how it was ever going to happen. And yet here we are. I thought Mark Tyson, who is a conservative commentator on Fox, kind of summed it up well this morning. I'd like you to hear his analysis real quick. Let's go to Mark.
Look, it shows how weak this case is, that they literally are depending on a serial perjurer to make their case. So I don't think things are going well for the prosecution in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion, they're doing even worse. I mean, as this campaign of lawfare has unfolded, Donald Trump is rising in the polls. The New York Times poll just came out. He's winning in 5 of the 6 swing states, including way outside the margin of error in 3 of them. I mean, that puts him in shooting distance of 270 electoral votes if he wins those states. And he's rising with Hispanics. He's rising with younger voters, and he's winning 20% of the black vote.
Pretty incredible stuff. We're going to get to that new poll in just a moment, but just think about what Mark is saying. In other words, they keep throwing everything at him, and Teflon Trump, it like bounces right at. What is that expression? Whatever you say, like, oh, I can't remember. It's like the thing that the kids say on the playground, sticks like glue or something. Anyway, it all like backfires straight onto them. So they're they're tossing these darts and it's like boomerang, comes right back to hit them and hit them hard. And it's because they don't have anything, right? When you don't have anything, guess what? The emperor has no clothes, right? It gets exposed really, really fast. Consider, for example, how you've already seen over and over again them start to shift. As I said on CNN, let's go back to, do we have Jake Tapper from last week? So this is one of their key anchors, right, over at CNN. And he's like Mr. Anti-Trump. And all of a sudden, I told you about this in real time as it happened. I said to you, look at this. They're starting to shift. They're starting to shift because now he's dropping this little hint that maybe it's not such a good thing that Michael Cohen gets to get out there and say all this bad stuff when there's a gag order on Donald Trump. Watch.
You're a voter, okay, and you're hearing this stuff. It might actually be just like a fundamental issue of fairness. That doesn't seem fair that Donald Trump's not allowed to criticize him when he's constantly throwing punches at him.
Well, the voters that we talked about.
Boom. All right. So he said this and I showed you. I said, gosh, this is really interesting. It's like they know something now, right? They know the jig is up, so to speak. And so one after another now, they've been folded into line. They're on CNN. Abby Phillips, is that her name? I'm not familiar with this woman, but she's, I guess, one of their hosts or something, or maybe she's one of their commentators. I don't know. But I was struck by what she said about Stormy having a vendetta against Donald Trump and how the jury's going to think about that. And that's going to come into consideration. And they're going to question her testimony as a result of that. Here we go.
He has always been the most sensitive about this Stormy Daniels allegation in particular. Caitlin knows this actually really well because asking him about this at the White House would be like World War II for the White House staff. They absolutely hated this line of questioning. And it really gets to, it reminds me of how he responded to the Access Hollywood tape. That's definitely him, right, on the audio tape, but he still likes to deny it. And so when he's confronted with the sort of worst parts of himself, he really reacts very strongly and very negatively. And that's what this whole case is about. However, I do think Stormy Daniels, the way that she conveyed that, you know, Trump is going to make the argument, and I don't know what his lawyers are going to do, but he's already been making the case. This is a concocted case to dirty him up before the election, to make him seem bad in front of the American public, even though there's no like legally illegal thing that happened here. That's his argument. I don't know that Stormy Daniels helped the prosecutors in batting that down because she seemed to have a personal vendetta against him. It may be justified, but that's what it seemed like based on the defense.
Bingo. And so you know what? It made his argument stronger. And Americans are watching this going, wow, they really do want to get him. I mean, come on. Letitia James and the $500 million. I mean, think about that, guys, right? Because he inflated the square footage on his house and Deutsche Bank lent him the money anyway. And she's like, I'm going to get you for $500 million. I mean, it's completely nuts. And then it's followed by this one where, you know, Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen are your lead witnesses. I don't think so. I mean, even Fareed Zakaria. Okay, so this guy, oh my goodness, he's like torture to watch. It's like watching paint dry. So we're going to give you the abridged version. Fareed Zakaria hosts a show on the weekend, and he just drones on and on and on and on and on and on. It's like, it is what it is, okay? It takes a special type. Anyway, even this guy, who's just such a pompous know-it-all, even he is being forced to admit that, gee, this is looking kind of a little bit political. You think, Fareed? Yeah, watch.
Meanwhile, Republicans seem to be uniting behind Trump. Whatever opposition he faced in the primaries has largely melted away. And the trials against him keep him in the spotlight, infuriate his base, who sees him as a martyr, and even may serve to make him the object of some sympathy among people in general who believe that his prosecutors are politically motivated. This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump. A majority of Americans are skeptical that Trump will be able to get a fair trial, according to a CNN poll. And I haven't even mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein, all of whom would probably take votes away from Biden. Things could change. Polls do suggest that were Trump to be convicted of a felony, it could shift votes in Biden's favor. The administration may be able to pull off a ceasefire in Gaza and then a broader political settlement that gives Palestinians political rights and Israel diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. Trump could always embroil himself in some kind of scandal. But trend lines are not working in Biden's favor. He needs to do something bold and dramatic to seize the initiative on asylum policy.
Well, that's not going to happen, okay? Because you know what? The economy is what the economy is. And that is exactly why everybody's so over Joe Biden right now. And they're looking at all these things and they're like, wow, you guys are really desperate. You are so desperate. And yes, Fareed, you're right on that. He does increasingly look like a martyr because when everybody keeps coming up empty-handed and they're not able to actually stick anything on him, Americans go, wait a second, like that's not right. That's not what our legal system's supposed to be. And I'm not just talking about his base, as you are. I'm talking about middle of the road independents. I showed you guys a poll just last week that showed middle of the road independents increasingly feel that democracy is under threat, not because of Donald Trump, but because of Joe Biden. It is Joe Biden that they blame. And when you look at the brand new poll out today, this one is stunning, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely stunning. Incredible news. He is just way ahead in so many of these swing states. Take a look at this right here. This is, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada. Do we have the New York Post headline? This is fantastic. Take a look at that. Trump now leading in 5 battleground states, all of which Biden won in 2020. Okay, breaking news. Guess what? If this keeps up, Donald Trump is the next president of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. And the Democrats have no one to blame except themselves because they've got an idiot in the White House who doesn't know how to govern, who doesn't understand the economy, who doesn't understand the border, who doesn't understand the importance of law and order. And consequently, it's all falling apart. Big time. Even, again, I keep going back to CNN. It's amazing, that they're falling like dominoes here because the handwriting's on the wall. Even CNN saying this is like a disaster. Capital D, disaster. Watch their sort of poll number cruncher here.
These Sunbelt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004. How about these Great Lake battleground states? This is something that the Joe Biden campaign can work with. Look, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump up 3, but that's well within the margin of error. Wisconsin, Donald Trump up 1, well within the margin of error. And actually, a Joe Biden lead, well within the margin of error, up a point here. This they can work with the Joe Biden campaign. This, the Donald Trump campaign, absolutely loves, and it looks like a lot of the other polling on the Sun Belt.
That's reality, okay? That's reality. And we can get into the reasons why. But before I do, one thing that's also incredibly important to note here is the shift in demographics. In other words, I don't know how he's going to pull this off. I just don't know how Joe Biden has any shot of winning back these states. Once you throw the RFK into it, it gets even worse for him. But I'm not surprised by this, only because I think people in these parts of the country are really, really hurting. And you can keep telling them, oh, it's because of Trump. It's because of, you're not the right ethnicity or the right gender or the right whatever. And they're like, no, because you know what? Like a few years ago, things were a heck of a lot better. And I felt like I had more opportunity and there was more prosperity and there was more law and order and our border wasn't out of control. And we weren't looking at the threat of World War III on the horizon. People are not dumb. It's amazing to me that Joe Biden thinks he can come into office, have some grand old plan and spin it all day long, and then not be held accountable when, inflation goes to 9%. The fact that he was on CNN trying to argue, ladies and gentlemen, just last week, that he inherited 9% inflation from his predecessor. Nobody let Zell on you. You got 1.4%. You had 1.4% and you blew it. You drove it to 9% because you added a third stimulus check, because you let Chuck Schumer and company just spend away and write the checks. And you had a Federal Reserve who didn't help you much by printing some more. Okay. It all adds up to mega inflation. And even if you have a little bit of growth, the economy's growing at 1.6%. Hey, it's better than nothing, right? If you don't have wages growing enough to keep up with that growth, and they're not, people feel more poor. They feel poorer, okay? And that is why when you look at the Rust Belt of America, they're saying, this ain't for me. No, thank you. This guy's not doing it. And he's not. That's just the reality. And this cuts across party lines. I mean, you can either do the job or you can't. And if you can do the job, everybody benefits. In fact, when I look back at median incomes, during the Trump administration, prior to March 2020, median incomes went up the most they had gone up in 50 years. And they went up for everybody, okay? It didn't matter what color you were. It didn't matter what sex you were. It didn't matter what your preferences were. It went up for everybody because when you have good policy, economic policy, tax policy, trade policy, then it does actually help everyone in the country. But when you have bad policy, like this administration has, because they don't understand it, because they put a social worker in charge of the National Council of Economic Advisors, I don't know. They just are so checked out on this stuff that it results in bad things. So consequently, it doesn't matter. Every demographic is saying, wait a second, this guy, not for me. I mean, historically, Democrats have been able to count on the black vote, the Hispanic vote, the female vote, right? There's certain like demos that they target and they kind of had in the past locked up. And Donald Trump has just blown all of that out of the water. It's really amazing to see. And you've got to see the CNN explanation of what's going on when you look at the demographics within these poll numbers. Here we go.
Why do you think Biden is doing better in the Great Lakes and Trump is doing so much better in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, the Trump coalition is changing. That's basically what's cooking here. This is at least one of the big reasons why. So this is among likely voters in all these battleground states we just spoke about. Back in 2020, 84% of the Trump campaigns, the Trump coalition was white. Look where it is now. It's 78%. The non-white portion of the Trump coalition, it was 13% in 2020. Look at this now. It's 19%. So the Trump coalition is becoming more diverse. And, of course, those Sun Belt battleground states are more diverse than the Great Lake battleground states.
You're looking at the Nevadas and the Arizonas here.
Of course. If you look at Nevada, Arizona, heavy Hispanic population, Georgia, heavily African-American population. Michigan does have some black voters in it, but Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are heavily, heavily white.
That's very interesting. Okay, add it all up. What does this say about where the race stands right now? We're talking Electoral College and the race to 270.
Yeah, the race to 270. It's advantage Donald Trump, but he's not over the 270 mark just yet, all right? So if we flip Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia here in your lighter shades of pink, you add them to the states, and of course the 2nd Congressional District up in Maine, which Donald Trump won last time around, that gets him to 268 electoral votes. If we keep Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in the too close to call category, along with Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, Joe Biden at 225. So it's advantage Donald Trump, but Joe Biden does at this point have a path to 270.
Yeah, and right.
Really fascinating. I mean, think about how amazing that is. If I told you that the Republicans had a shot at the black and the Hispanic vote, I mean, you'd laugh, right? But I've said this all along. Like maybe I'm too simplistic. I don't know. Simple girl from New Hampshire, live free or die territory. Don't forget to check out the Trish Regan .shop. You can get your mug there. Live free or die. I mean, like, look, I'm pretty simple. Like, you know, you had me at lower taxes, for goodness sakes. Like, give more power to the people. Let them have the say and let the federal government do what the federal government needs to do, which is keep us safe, which is like enforce the border. All right. Like, not that hard, right? And the idea that we conflate and confuse with race and gender, all this stuff that just is like, gets in the way of what we should be as a nation, which is a meritocracy that it has opportunity for everyone. The fact that all this stuff gets in the way is really pretty darn shameful. And for whatever reason, over the years, the Republicans have gotten themselves sort of boxed into this corner where they're seen as some really bad things. And Donald Trump has been seen as some really bad things, even though he's not the one like Biden who calls people boy, right? Like a 50-some-odd-year-old man. Like, I'm sorry, but you know what? I call it like it is. And I think it's about time the rest of America do the same. So I am encouraged to see that. That shows me, you know what? We're a lot more colorblind than you think. And Americans are simple because we're just people that want to take care of ourselves and take care of our families and provide for our families and provide for ourselves. And you know what? That doesn't have to be all about what color you are, what gender you are, whether you're Spanish speaking or not Spanish speaking. For goodness sakes, they've, by the way, completely lost the Hispanics with this X stuff. Give me a break. Latinx. No Latin woman wants to be known as Latinx. She's a Latina. The entire language you'd have to redo. Think about it. It's a Romance language. There's like feminine and masculine for everything. All the nouns, are you going to redo everything, guys? All for political correctness? Hispanics are like, I don't think so. This makes no sense. So Hispanics are deserting him. The black vote is starting to desert Joe Biden. And next up, women. I mean, that's all that they're clinging to, I guess. But, you know, women are smart too. They are the CFOs, if you would, of their households, and they care about their families and making sure there's food on the table and a roof over their heads. So security and financial security, these things matter. It's a big part of why I started 76 Research, by the way, just to give a plug for the newsletter. We had a new one out on Friday. If you haven't signed up, please do me that favor. Go over to 76 Research right now, sign up. Go check out the model portfolios because there's 10 to 15 stocks in each one of them, handpicked by Rob and myself. And we're big believers in making sure that you invest safely for the future. So we're not doing it for you. We are just merely giving you our insight, our expertise. Rob has worked on Wall Street for more than 20 years. He's managed billions of dollars. He's been a stock picker his whole career. I'm very much obviously in the news cycle, on the front lines of this news cycle from an economic perspective, from a market perspective, from a political perspective. And so what we've been able to do is come together to really identify pockets of opportunity for you for the long haul. So 3 different portfolios for you. Model portfolios. Go over to 76research.com. Go and click on the tab that says model portfolios. I'll see if I can put it in the chat as well. And you can subscribe to one of them. I highly encourage. And if nothing else, just sign up and get the free stuff, right? Because you owe that to yourself. Anyway, it's a difficult time. And any way you look at this, people are saying, I've had it. Here, I want to show you this because did you see over the weekend, this was incredible what happened in New Jersey, a blue state, mind you. Over at the Jersey Shore. I think Drew has some pictures. This is incredible. Look at that crowd, ladies and gentlemen. This was Donald Trump at the Jersey Shore over the weekend. You know, he finished up in the courthouse and then went to the beach there to give his speech. And there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I don't know what the final number is. We've heard different quotes. Some have said 80,000. I don't know, but that's a lot of people. If you ask me, right, you look at that, that is quite a crowd. Just incredible. Showing up for the former president of the United States in a blue state in New Jersey on Mother's Day. Like, who does that on Mother's Day weekend? Like, don't you have better things to do? No, honey, I want to go see Trump speak at the Jersey Shore. I mean, that is what they're doing. So think about that. It's truly pretty incredible. I don't think that Biden could have done that. Do you think Biden could have done that? I'm guessing not. But people are out there supporting him. And this support is growing and growing and growing. And as I said, the demographics are shifting. Consider this former NFL legend. I want you to see him declaring his support for Donald Trump.
I just want to say, I grew up a Democrat, and I've always been a Democrat until I met this man right here. I'll tell you what, he will not have to worry about nobody in my family ever vote for a Democrat again, okay?
Don't you just love that guy? Don't you just love that guy? I tell you, it has been a very exciting day. You guys, not one person left here. You're still here yelling and screaming. So, my word is Wildwood, are you in the house? I can't hear you. Wildwood, are you in the house?
It's pretty amazing, right? So Lawrence Taylor, NFL legend, coming out for Trump there, and Wildwood, New Jersey, going absolutely crazy. Again, you've seen so many Black entertainers, musicians, artists, athletes that have said enough with this, right? You know, the policy's not working, so let's change. Let's do something different. And they're going with Trump. Think about that. The demos are shifting in real time. I don't think the Democrats know what to do about this. And by the way, making it extraordinarily difficult is everything that's happening overseas, right? And everything that's happening here on college campuses. So you get all the lefty kids out there with their tents and shutting down universities. You can't have a graduation these days at Columbia University. Jerry Seinfeld gets booed off of Duke, right? You know, they're having this big protest there because these kids, these super lefties, are saying, whoa, we have to stand up to Israel, etc., our longtime ally. And so then there's Joe Biden, who historically has always stood with Israel, now doesn't know what to do because, again, his base is deteriorating. His base is against him. And it's going to hurt him in places like Michigan. It's going to hurt him in places like Minnesota. Let me tell you, it's going to hurt him everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. I'd even dare to suggest it's going to hurt him in some blue states like New York, like New Jersey, even New Hampshire, which has recently been leaning blue thanks to all the Massachusetts folks moving up into live free or die territory because, you know, we have no taxes, zero income tax, zero sales tax, and everybody likes the sound of it. Hopefully they don't bring their high taxes with them. But anyway, you see what's going on? You have this sort of renaissance happening in conservative thought. Think of how exciting that is because people want to have a bigger stake in things. A bigger stake in their future. And the policy that's out there right now, it's not very good. I mean, I talk about inflation a lot. It's the reason. Do we have this too, that great chart that I love? Because you can see the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden trying to say, oh, you know, I inherited 9% inflation. It's like, no, buddy, you didn't. This chart's good. We get another one that's really good too. I mean, here's the difference, right? Like, energy prices up nearly 40%, gasoline up nearly 50%, 47.8%. I keep saying 40 and I should be saying nearly 50 because, by the way, I think this chart came out about a month ago and prices have continued to go up since then. You've got groceries. Overall, they're now up some 30%, eggs up 50%. Guys, this is not good. This is not good. And yet Joe Biden tries to tell us that, oh, you know, inflation was 9% when I came into office. Well, no, it wasn't. Here we go. Take a look at this. Unbelievable stuff. Look at the red. That's inflation under Donald Trump. Wow, right? Take a look at the blue. Take a look at the blue. You see how much it spiked? And even though, yes, it's come down since it spiked when he first came in, it's come down to a level that is still way higher than when we had Donald Trump in office. And so when the New York Times tries to tell you, oh, you know what, wages are going up. No, ask them whether real wages are going up, real wages adjusted for inflation, because they're not. And that's the problem. That's why RFK told Ben Shapiro the other day, you know what, the Federal Reserve is a criminal enterprise because they are robbing you of your money. Well, not just the Fed, you've got policy idiots in charge that are causing more and more inflation. And so because of this idiotic policy that enables these money printers to just keep going and going and going, we're in a tougher spot. It's one of the reasons why I'm really proud to have partnered with American Heart for Gold. These guys are wonderful. You know, I just spoke to the CEO the other day. He's going to be on the show this week. I'm so excited to bring that to you. Max Baker, forgive me. He's the president of the company, American Heart for Gold. Wonderful company, super high rated. And I'm proud of this partnership, mostly proud too, because it's good for you guys. If you buy gold with them, you can get up to $15,000 in silver if you use my name. So make sure you use my name, Trish, Trish. You can actually just text Trish to 65532. Do that right now. Text Trish to 65532 or call them 1-844-495-1115. They're great. They're not too aggressive. They'll walk you through it all. They'll help explain it all. You can get the real stuff delivered to your house. You can keep it in storage with them, and they'll buy it back as well. That's one of the other great things. They'll buy it back at price. So 1-844-495-1115. Get up to $15,000 in free silver. By the way, silver's been on a tear. I've been watching silver, and this is incredible. Rob and I were just writing about this the other day at 76, because silver as well. Sure, I know everybody wants gold, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, central banks all around the world that are saying, ooh, this US dollar is getting kind of scary. even though, ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. dollar is still the prettiest girl at the dance, because the ECB's cutting and cutting and cutting, and people are like, oh, wow, the dollar, it seems to be hanging on in comparison. But, in comparison to what? That's what gets me. And Joe Biden's like, oh, the U.S. is growing and we're growing more than, and we're the strongest economy in the world. Well, duh, what do you think we should be? I mean, we are the United States of America. We are still the hegemonic power of the world. Therefore, yes, as the world's reserve currency, we should be the strongest. But because of these flaws, because of all this money printing, people are increasingly turning to gold and silver. And this is why I encourage you, as part of diversification. I mean, just, everybody has sort of their different level of tolerance for these things. And I encourage you to figure out what yours is. I'm not your financial advisor, but I do think that it's a meaningful part of any portfolio in some small way, right? You want to make sure you're diversified in light of all this inflation. Okay, we got more news to get to. My gosh. I mean, it's just incredible. Drew, do we have Whoopi by any chance? I don't know if we were talking about that earlier, whether or not we have Whoopi Goldberg talking sort of crazy talk. She's been out there saying how he's the, the next, well, I don't even like to say the words, because she basically goes back to World War II and tells you, we're going to be in the Third Reich again. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. You know what? That's really insulting to anybody who sacrificed their life in World War II. It's insulting to the millions of Jewish people that were slaughtered in World War II. It's just really a totally inappropriate analogy to use. And yet this is what they say over and over and over again. Pretty darn disgusting. I mean, we had to sort of hear it again from Joe Scarborough as well today. Joe Scarborough speaking this morning, trying to warn people. Okay, so this is a guy who's got a show on MSNBC, and he knows where his bread is buttered. They keep leaning into this anti-Trump stuff in hope of getting more ratings. I don't know if it's working for them. I mean, it's interesting to me that CNN is kind of coming around and saying, okay, we got to call a spade here. But Joe Scarborough is doing some little chit chat with his buddy Willie. No, sorry, not Willie, the other one. Donnie. Oh, everybody's got a little E on their end. Anyway, so Donnie goes on the show. Donnie, well, you'll see him. And they're talking, and Joe just goes off, and I'm like, is this getting old to anyone? Like, how many times are you going to sit there and tell us he's the devil? Like we're all like, okay, yeah, you keep telling us that, and like everything keeps backfiring and boomerangs on all of you. Like, none of this stuff is sticking. This Michael Cohen thing is a mess. This Letitia James thing is a mess. You get the Supreme Court now saying, I don't think there's any there. I mean, enough already, right? But anyway, we're supposed to be scared. Make sure you're scared. Joe has like a total meltdown here saying, you got to be scared. And if you're a Republican, you cannot absolutely vote for this guy. Because if you do, it's the end of the world as we know it. Wasn't that a song? Here we go.
We have a vote. We're going to have a vote this fall. And I know a lot of Republicans, John Meacham would call them Peter Millar vest-wearing Republicans, who just want to pretend that it's Bob Dole against Bill Clinton. They're going, well, I just always vote for a Republican. No, this year you're not just voting for a Republican. It's a vote for a candidate who doesn't believe in the most basic principles of American democracy. And we could go down the list, but I really don't want to waste my breath on it, because everybody knows about it. Everybody knows about the killing of generals and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you have Republicans, those Peter Millar vest-wearing Republicans who want to say, oh, it's just like, it's Republicans and Democrats. What's the difference? No, it's a vote actually for somebody that does not subscribe to the most basic precepts of American democracy against a candidate who does. And it's really that simple, Donnie, isn't it?
It is. We've said many times on the show, when an authoritarian tells you what they're going to do, you pay attention to him. Well, now his followers are telling you what they're going to do, so you pay attention to it. And for anybody, and Joe, you can tick off the list. We can all tick off the list, whether it's no longer a free election, whether it's a weaponized Justice Department, whether it's an independent Federal Communications Commission, on and on and on. We can go. When anybody says to me, well, that's not really going to happen because we've got checks and balances in the institutions, You're already seeing there will be no checks and balances. So not only do we have the tell from fearless leader, we have the tell from the lemming followers. So there's no mystery here. So there is absolutely no mystery here. So anybody that votes Republican and doesn't understand you're voting for the end of democracy, just pay attention to the Sunday shows this past weekend. And the other thing I want to say, and we've talked a lot about this on the show, and I've talked about this as a man, these pathetic men, the spinelessness, the obsequiousness, the sucking upness, I don't know how they face their loved ones. I don't know how they go home to their children.
Wow, what was that? I missed the part. That's the first time I heard him say that about men. I'd only listened to the beginning of it. Whoa. Oh my gosh. So they're going to try and shame you into voting for Biden. Incredible. I mean, what's up with these men? Men who actually want to protect women and protect their children and make sure that we don't wind up in World War III, make sure that they can put food on the table for their kids and that we actually have an economy and prosperity and that we live in a safe place that's not infiltrated by people that we don't know who just keep coming here and coming here and coming here. This is amazing. So last week, the administration made some subtle changes. Nobody reported on this. It's really kind of amazing that they made some subtle changes to the asylum requirements. It's now going to be that if you're somebody that the U.S. suspects of being a terrorist, that you can't actually plead asylum and get refugee status here. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's even a thing? Like, wouldn't you think, by the way, wouldn't you think it's kind of a given if you are somebody who is suspected of being a terrorist that you actually can't just come into the U.S. and plead asylum status? I mean, we actually have to put that in writing. I think that any normal man would want to make sure that he knows who's in and about his neighborhood, because he wants to protect his wife and kids. I mean, come on, Donnie. But anyway, so, they're going to like hit you with this all day long, over and over and over again. Donald Trump is bad. You cannot vote. I mean, what else have they got other than these fear tactics? They think that this sells, and yet it doesn't sell because Americans are like, gee, it really wasn't that bad. And you want to talk about taking over things. I mean, you got 4 different lawsuits against the guy, 91 indictments against the guy, including criminal accounts. And yet, the Michigan police, largest police union in the country, came out and endorsed Donald Trump. You know why? They think it's all a bunch of BS. They do. I mean, you think they're believing the likes of Whoopi Goldberg when she says this kind of, I'll leave that word blank on the air?
I'm going to be, on day one, I'm going to be a dictator. Who says it to you, tells you, I'm going to put you people away. I'm going to take all the journalists. I'm going to take all the gay folks. I'm going to move you all around and disappear you. If that's the country you want, you know who to vote for. If that's not the country you want, you have to make a decision.
Incredible. I mean, just so enormously irresponsible. But I guess when you're desperate, you become irresponsible. And that's what this smacks of. Total, utter desperation. They are so desperate to make sure that and I'm like, why? You know what, guys? He's actually not going to fire you. And he's actually not going to, look, I realize that you all want to put Newsmax and Fox and OAN and RBN and anything you can out of business. I do realize that. I realize how aggressive this FCC is under this administration. You know what? He didn't do that. He actually didn't do any of that. I mean, Jim Acosta was welcome to be as rude as he wanted to be. And yet, you guys are the opposite. I mean, think about the letters that went out. Remember when the whole impeachment inquiry started around Joe Biden? And they went totally berserk, and there were these really threatening letters that went out to all the networks. Like, don't you dare, don't you dare. And then again, there's been very threatening language around Hunter Biden. For goodness sakes, Fox just pulled a whole show that they had on the air because they threatened a lawsuit related to Hunter Biden. So Hunter Biden is actually going to be back in court this summer. Those gun charges, remember, those are coming back to rear their ugly head because one judge, thankfully, knew that she couldn't sign off on that plea agreement. So are we actually going to have real reporting on that? I wonder. I also wonder how the heck they're going to run this guy. In all seriousness, you know what? He needs to take his balance of nature. He does. He needs to. I take my balance of nature every day. Fruits and veggies, everyone. I feel really good. I think I look pretty good. Thank you for the nice compliments. I am never one to turn, I read all your comments. I really do. I promise you I do. And so even if you just make a comment, I don't always, I am watching them live. So it's kind of a little bit of a party trick to be able to look at your live comments and talk to you all at the same time. But I always go back and I look at your comments after too. So if you want to leave a comment below, feel free to do that. But a lot of you have been very complimentary, and I always, they're like, oh, you are so respectful. I appreciate it. You're like, Trish, I don't know if I can say this, but I really liked your dress or your hair or whatever. And I'm like, you can say it. You can say it. It's a free country. You can say it. And I like compliments. So I appreciate you giving them to me. And I'm going to pass sort of the torch around here to our friends at Balance of Nature, because I do credit my health and my well-being in part to my lifestyle choices. And so I drink a lot of water and I walk every day and I do a little weight exercise. And I also take my vitamins, Balance of Nature, fruits and veggies every single day, every single morning. And I encourage you to do this too. 1-800-246-8751 is their number. If you use my name, Trish, Trish, you will get 35% off plus an additional $10 off plus free shipping. So it's a really good deal. I encourage you to check this out if you're not already on it. I know so many of you are. Leslie, you told me before you already take it. And then I got a call from my kid's music teacher. Oh my gosh, I love this stuff. I can't believe you take it too. I do. So fruits and veggies, Balance of Nature, 1-800-246-8751. Discount code Trish, Trish. And yes, I think that Biden could use some because, man, weekend at Bernie's, right? Weekend at Biden's. It's really getting kind of alarming. I don't know how they run them. I just don't know how they do it. I mean, if I think they're going to lose, guys. I think they're really and truly going to lose. Unless, of course, they do something funny. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute because it's sensitive. But the story that you didn't hear much about, unless you were listening to this show, was the Georgia Oversight Panel's ruling that came out last week. I want to get to that. But I first just want to once again highlight the consequences of bad policy. I mean, if you have a bunch of bad policies out there and you put a social worker who used to be a music major in charge of the economy instead of somebody who actually understands this stuff, then you know what, you're going to pay the consequences. If you put somebody who's a former wannabe news anchor at MSNBC, that would be Jennifer Granholm, former governor for 2 seconds of Michigan, as head of your energy department, somebody who doesn't understand energy markets and is just there basically on behalf of big money to try and lobby to have more EVs that people can't afford, well, then you know what? You're going to have problems. You're going to have consequences. Think about how stupid it was. I mean, they knew that they were dealing with this problem with Ukraine and Russia. They knew that they were going to have to put tariffs in and take natural gas off the market for the U.S. coming from Russia. And what did they do? They said no more drilling in the U.S. Jennifer told everybody to go out and just buy an EV, $60K they don't have. It's like they really, really don't get it. This is basic stuff. And I don't know, like maybe they're just so entrenched within their bureaucracies that one hand is not talking to the other. But it seems to me that the State Department might have a conversation with the Energy Department saying, hey, we got this big thing going on. We're going to have to take Russian natural gas off the market. That means energy prices are going up. Do you really want your average American to have to pay the price for all of that? It's only going to come back to bite you in the you know what, politically speaking, which it has. But nope. Nobody understands it. Nobody does these things. So you get stupid people in the job that are only myopically looking out for their interests, and we pay the price, which is why I'm really pleased to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. AmericansForProsperity.org is an organization that cares about they're like really dorky like me. They're really into the wonky policy dorky stuff. And that's what I love about them. So we're talking to I had a woman on the other day who's fantastic. I encourage you to go and hear what she had to say about healthcare. But it's healthcare, it's energy, it's inflation, it's all of these things that really do matter. So they're out there canvassing the country, looking for the best candidates, helping them come up with the best ideas so that we make sure that we don't just get the White House, which I think is really very much within grabs. We talked about that path to 270. It exists. So I think that's very much in play. But you got to make sure not only do you get that, but you got to get the House, you got to get the Senate, and you got to get all of it, guys. You got to get all of it because you want to get the right policies through in order to put ourselves in a better position. Otherwise, it's just more infighting. And I don't think we can take it anymore, right? We just need to have some real red blood running through the veins of Washington, D.C., so that we get policies that help everyone. We are a great meritocracy, and AmericansForProsperity.org, they know it, and they want to help make sure that that happens. So I can't say enough good things about them. I encourage you to go check out all of their policies on their site and help educate yourself on the stuff that's really going to matter. We hope it's going to matter. I mean, you look at everything that's going on, you say to yourselves, remember what Fareed Zakaria was saying earlier in the program when I played you that little clip of how really and truly voters for Donald Trump, they don't always say it, right? He tends to perform more poorly in polls because people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to vote for Biden. And they're like really proud of it because for some reasons we understand, the left markets this in such a way that you can't say you're going to vote for Donald Trump. So, you get a phone call. Think about it. Are you going to tell some anonymous pollster that you're going to vote for Donald Trump? I mean, there could be repercussions to that, right? People are afraid to put up Trump signs. So nobody actually says what they really think. And that in and of itself, I think, is indeed very much a problem. And it's why you can't entirely get a full-on read, if you would, on what's actually going on. And I just think that the reality is this: Donald Trump is succeeding, and all of these cases are going to come back to bite Democrats in the you-know-what. And I think everybody knows it. This is what, nobody's really talking about. You're starting to hear it a little bit on CNN. They are, of course, sounding the panic alarm on MSNBC. But we have another soundbite from Fareed Zakaria that I want to show you. Again, Fareed being that CNN host that comes on once on the weekend and just is really like watching paint dry. It's very milquetoast, and it's very pompous, and it's very annoying. And even the accent and everything, it's just mightier than thou, right? But occasionally you get glimmers of intelligence. And here was a brief moment where he said something kind of interesting. He's sounding the alarm, so to speak. Let's go to clip 2 of Fareed Zakaria.
Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details. As someone worried about the prospects of a second Trump term, I think it's best to be honest about reality. I understand that polls are not always accurate, but in general, they have tended to underestimate Donald Trump's support, not overestimate it. I doubt that there are many shy Biden voters in the country. The economy has been in a robust recovery for more than 2 years now, with unemployment hitting a 54-year low in 2023 and increasing only slightly since then. But Biden is getting little credit for it. The shift here is stark. On the question of who voters trust more to deal with the economy, Trump has a 22-point lead over Biden, according to an NBC poll from January. This marks a 15-point bump for Trump compared to the same poll in 2020. Perhaps this is because inflation is a far more pervasive problem than unemployment, affecting all Americans every day. Perhaps it's because people's views on the economy now are largely derived from their broader attitudes towards the candidates. But whatever the reasons, it's a stunning reversal in the midst of a relentless stream of good economic news.
Okay, I want to jump in right there. So what's fascinating to me is that this is echoing what we've heard on MSNBC and a few other places. In other words, it's you, not me. They're trying to gaslight you. They're trying to make you think the economy's just fine. The economy's just great. So what are you so upset about? Hey, aren't you okay with 175,000 jobs being added last month? By the way, you need like 300,000 to 400,000 just to keep pace with the population growth. So 175 is not very good. And by the way, it's a lot less than anybody thought we were going to get. So bad bomb of a number there last month, Joey. You get consumer sentiment from the University of Michigan coming in at levels that we haven't seen since 2021. So Fareed's probably going to tell you, oh, that's you. That's all in your head. That's what I heard MSNBC saying the other day too. No, it's all in your head. It's not in your head. The reason why people feel really lousy about things right now is because you know what? They don't have as much money. Okay, the economy may be growing 1.6%, nothing to write home about, thank you very much. But they don't feel very good about anything because you know what? Wages are not growing at the same kind of pace, which means when you look at things from an apples to apples basis, when you look at real wages versus inflation, people don't have much. People can't afford much. And this hits everyone, by the way. I mean, it hits the middle class and the poor the hardest, but everyone sees it. Everyone sees this. I mean, you try and book a trip for the summer. Good luck. I'm like, okay, at least my dollar is sort of strong if I go overseas. I'm going back to Ireland again. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, at least the dollar is like doing okay. But wow. I mean, look at plane fares. It makes sense when transportation costs are up 40%, that yes, plane fares are up, but they're more than 40% more than they were just a year ago. Because you know what? It's cumulative. It goes up and then it goes up and then it goes up. So when I have to say, oh, you know, remember when we went here in 2019? Remember when we went here in 2018? It's like the good old days before Joe Biden came into office. And so people are reminiscing about that. And that's why Donald Trump looks like he is a very sure path to victory, increasingly so. Anything can happen. I don't believe in counting your chickens before they hatch, so to speak. But if you look at the numbers, he's got a really good shot. The question is, what might they do to get in the way? I mean, let's be honest with each other, right? I mean, this is why I'm glad that Lara Trump is now at the RNC. I think she's having a very honest dialogue and conversation about this with people. She has signed up 100,000 poll workers. All of this is good. But when you see things like what we saw out of Georgia, and I want to get to this story because, look, it's tricky, and I'm not suggesting anything that I shouldn't suggest. But I'm alarmed by this because to me, if you have any kind of problems, and even if it was just an honest mistake, you want to make sure that you shore this stuff up, right? You want to shore it up before you go into November 2024. It's really incredibly important. The Georgia Election Board, the oversight panel, came out last week and they reprimanded none other than Fulton County. What's going on in Fulton County? What's up in Fulton County? You know, between Fannie and Nathan and now the election board having to come down on Fulton County because it seems that they double counted some 3,000 votes. I mean, this is pretty wild stuff. And so the answer was, you know, either Fulton County paid this huge fine, they discovered this on the recount, or they dealt with some oversight coming in. So that's the upshot, basically. So there was some double counting of 3,075 ballots. There were other allegations of irregularities. This is according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, as well as other papers there in the area. The Georgia Recorder, for example, again, not a lot of wide reporting on this. This is sort of, we're in the no-go zone, I guess. But what Georgia election officials determined was that there were some mistakes that were made by election workers in the county that would not have changed the outcome, but certainly undermine confidence, right? You never want to undermine confidence. Joe Biden narrowly defeated Donald Trump by roughly 12,000 votes. So would 3,000 have mattered? No, but you understand that people are saying, oh, well, you know, if there are 3,000 there, you know, maybe there's, and we're not going to necessarily go there. But what I am going to tell you is this: you want to make sure that you have some belief and trust in the system. And so what they're trying to get to the bottom of right now is just exactly how this all went down. Okay, let's go with honest mistake. Let's make sure that there are no more honest mistakes in the future. I want to take you to the testimony there of some of the investigators as they were testifying before this election official board that was using their oversight to kind of just determine what in fact went down. We have a couple of sound bites. Let's start with one of the first ones here. Let's cue this up so people can see what went down. The story that didn't get reported until
there's three counts and there's three different numbers, and I would think that the third count, the machine count 2, which is the third count, coming right off of the hand count that took those very same ballots and ran them through the big ICC fast scanners, should have come up with the same number. And it did not come up with the same number. So the counts don't agree. 1, 2, and 3, they don't agree. For the investigator, do you agree that every vote should have a ballot image?
At this point in time, no, it wasn't required.
I didn't ask if it was required. Do you agree that it should have a ballot image?
Again, the ballot images should be recorded. But again, the vote is captured in that paper ballot. The ballot image is not the vote. It is merely an electronic picture of the ballot so that we can go back and people can review them. And so it's part of the paper trail that we use to confirm the accuracy of the results. So yes, right now, ballot images are required to be uploaded and preserved so that they can be produced in response to a public record. So we would expect there should be ballot images for every ballot. But again, in 2020, this was brand new equipment that counties were getting used to using. They weren't necessarily always doing things correctly. Some of the ballot images were not necessarily preserved, but again, the purpose of this investigation was to determine whether or not a violation of the election code occurred, and we have presented our findings.
Great. That still doesn't answer the question. Should every vote have a ballot image?
So you're seeing and hearing some applause there in the back of the room. The panel commissioner, they're asking a pretty important question, but nonetheless, the investigators couldn't really answer, right? Maybe that was out of their scope. It's more of an opinion thing. Do you think that there should be a receipt, so to speak, a ballot image that matches the vote? And I think we've all kind of decided that it would be a good idea to do that, right? Like, it's kind of a good idea because you want that proof should you need to go back and actually investigate it. And you might need to go back and investigate it. I'm going to show you why in a second. But before we do, some more sound coming to us there from Fulton County, Georgia, where the Georgia Oversight Panel, that state committee, was really pushing these investigators hard on a lot of different issues. Let's listen in.
Yes. Do you know why 380,761 ballot images from Election Day machine count are not available?
We subpoenaed Fulton County for all of their ballot images. We received approximately 518,000 ballot images.
From Election Day?
Those are for the recount.
Those are from the recount, but we have no ballot images for 380,761 ballots from Election Day, correct?
What was subpoenaed was the ballot images for the recount because that's what this case was about, not the Election Day.
Does Fulton County know why there are not 380,761 ballot images from Election Day?
As with the investigators, we have not been apprised of this allegation. This is the first I'm hearing about it. I have no idea what the basis of that allegation is, and so we would have to we can't answer that at this time.
Would Fulton County agree that every vote should have a ballot image?
So, they can't answer that question, but it kind of seems like it just should, right? Like you should be able to match it all up. But who am I to say this? I'm actually somebody who thinks you ought to present your license when you go to vote, right? Because what if you get to vote and they're going through and they look at the rolls and then they find your name and they say, oh no, you've already voted. What do you do? Fortunately, I don't know as it happens that often, but I always bring my ID with me. You know, I lived in New York for so long and I was always amazed. I'd always bring my ID because I thought, what if that happens? Like, how am I going to prove? No. This is me. I mean, is that too much to ask that you have some ID and maybe there's a receipt somewhere in the computer system or a paper ballot version of what you did? Because I have a feeling that 2024 could get ugly. I mean, 2020 got really ugly, but this goes both ways, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like one side. They want you to believe that Donald Trump was undermining democracy and how dare he ask for any recount anywhere, or maybe come up with another set of jurors, or electors, rather, that could possibly decide things, even though, by the way, they did do that in the 60s with JFK out in Hawaii. Anyway, let's go to Hillary Clinton, because this just blew me away when I heard it. It was in August of 2020, and it like haunts me because as we get closer and closer to fall of 2024, I want you to remember this, what she was willing to do, what she thought Joe Biden should do in the event that the election was close at all. In other words, Donald Trump can't do this, but Joe Biden sure can. He can hang on for dear life no matter what. Listen.
You know, Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
Okay, so I was stunned when I heard that. It sounded very Banana Republic-esque. This was August of 2020. She went on her friend's podcast, a woman who used to be on her PR team or something there, and she said this, and you see the PR lady jumping for joy. Oh boy, this will be exciting, right? We can have Florida and hanging chads all over again. It's okay if it's one side. It's not okay if it's the other side. Alan Dershowitz has pointed this out quite often, including on this show, and he's absolutely right. In other words, it's their way or the highway. And he's like, wait a second, you know, I'm the one who was actually helping Gore with those hanging chads way back when. But I think that perhaps they came out of that lesson learned. Perhaps Hillary Clinton came out of her experience up against Donald Trump. Lesson learned, right? Maybe she thinks, oh, I shouldn't have conceded. And so here's my advice for Joe. Don't concede. Don't concede. You hang on. You hold on no matter what. And then, hey, if it doesn't go your way, you can always pull up a Jimmy Carter, right? To say this kind of thing. Remember when Jimmy Carter said this? I mean, this is atrocious, absolutely atrocious. He said this to John Meacham, an MSNBC reporter, commentator, whatever, historian. And I was appalled. I was absolutely appalled. And then this became rhetoric. In fact, I had to hear Hillary Clinton, so did you, start to say this over and over and over again. It was just because the Russians put him there. He was not a legitimate president. Please give me a break. Let's cue Jimmy.
There's no doubt that the Russians did interfere in the election. And I think the interference, although not yet quantified, if fully investigated, would show that Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election. And he was put into office because the Russians interfered on his behalf.
So do you believe President Trump is an illegitimate president?
Based on what I just said, which I can't retract.
Ooh, funny. Anyway, that took on a whole life of its own. And the next thing you know, everybody's saying he's not a legitimate president. He was only put there by the Russians. The Russians stole the election. That became their calling card after Trump won. And then they made it very clear that they were not going to allow him to win, or they were going to fight it tooth and nail if it were close in 2020. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, it is so critical that he win, and he win big in 2024. Otherwise, we're going to be dealing with this again, I fear. And in different ways. And it's why, you know what, they got to get the ground game going. It's why I'm glad to see what Lara's doing over at the RNC. I'm glad to see Americans for Prosperity doing all they're doing. This is why it's good that there's a Georgia oversight panel there in Fulton County, Georgia, where all kinds of things go on, right? I mean, you get the Fannie Willis, Nathan Wade thing. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. I'd like to know how much there was any kind of conspiracy in terms of the effort to coordinate all of these cases. Why did they take this long? Why are they happening now instead of back when they should have? I mean, there's a lot of questions here, and this is frightening. It's actually really, really frightening. This didn't used to happen in the old days. This is all new territory, but they brought it on. Hillary Clinton's campaign is the one that went out and hired Perkins Coie, the law firm that then went and paid Fusion GPS Research, a bunch of former Wall Street Journal investigative reporters. They were the ones that had been contracted originally, incidentally, by members of the GOP to dig up dirt on Donald Trump. It then got sold off to the highest bidder, being in the Democrat Party, being Hillary Clinton's team. And this was just a bunch of, if you read it, and I did, immediately my reaction was, wait, is this like a piece for the Inquirer? It is not like any kind of intel document that you would actually read. And anybody do that. And yet they went with this. They went with this because they were trying to take him down, and they were trying to prove that somehow the Russians had him on speed dial, even though the Russians didn't. One thing after another. Pretty startling, disgusting stuff. And now here we are, living through it again. And now they're going after him with all they got. And they got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Which is where we are today. As Michael Cohen goes to the stand, and the big headline, this cracks me up, the big headline, how he reacted about Melania potentially responding to Stormy Daniels. That's what they're talking about. And apparently he wasn't as concerned as he was about some political stuff. Well, maybe that's what he told Cohen, right? But we actually also heard from Hope Hicks earlier in the week saying he was very concerned about what his wife thought. This is junk. It's just junk. And it's actually appalling that I have to sit here and even talk to you about it. This is pathetic stuff. We got real problems, America. We got inflation. We got a border issue. We got the threat of World War III on our doorstep. And yet this administration is so talentless, they can't handle any of that. And this is where we find ourselves, talking about Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen today. Lovely. Have you subscribed? Make sure you subscribe. I see all your comments here. Mike Costa, one of our great team members here on the show, talking about how cost of living is much, much less, where he was just, I guess, on vacation in Portugal. 65 cents for a coffee. I like it. Look, you got to compare it to the overall, I'm not going to wonk out on you, but per capita income, because I'm guessing they don't make as much money in Portugal. But, it's a good place to retire to or go on vacation to, right? Wine Country Stacking, a new team member. Thanks for being here. Don Bacco, good to see you. Yes, we are definitely indeed getting those likes. They're pouring in. Gosh, we got a ton of them, guys. So way to go. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for spreading the word. Make sure you make a comment, because I do, as I said, I read all your comments. I really do, on all of the things that come out. I will see you right back here live tomorrow. Much, much, much to discuss. See you then.